Hi, and welcome to Look Squirrel. I'm Ryan Howe, comic artist and designer, and this is where I share comics, art, and a bunch of other stuff that really inspires me creatively. Half the fun of comics is finding new stuff to enjoy. So if you're a reader, new or old, I hope today's book becomes a new favorite. And if you're a creator, hopefully there's a cool technique or insight you discover that you can roll into your own work. So without further delay, today I want to share Richard Stark's Parker, The Score by Darwyn Cooke. Published in 2012 by IDW, this is actually the third Parker adaptation Cooke did of Stark's books, but I think it just edges the others out at being my favorite. From the back cover, here's the quick synopsis. The Score is a high-octane trip across America as Parker assembles a dozen of the best capermen he can find to knock over his most audacious target yet, an entire town. They scheme, they prepare, and they execute with military precision, unaware that the whole thing is about to blow up in their faces. Long considered a high watermark in the Parker series, this new graphic novel brings the original to violent, double-crossing life. I should also mention right off the top, this is recommended for mature readers. There's some violence, language, and nudity. And Cooke's really stylized style might kind of trick you into the fact that it might not be more a mature title, but you've been warned. Now, I'm not normally drawn to highly realistic or photoreal art in comics. I pretty much always find it too stiff. It's really impressive, of course, but I like my comics looser with lots of energy. My absolute jam, though, is really stylized work, something Darwyn Cooke is a master of. From the line work to the panel composition to the coloring, this entire book oozes a really cool, confident energy that just grabs you by the throat and just drags you through the entire thing. As soon as you open the book, you're going to notice the entire thing is just black and yellow, and not even really shades of yellow. The yellow is mostly solid. It's not used with screens or with screen densities or anything like that, but it's really a texture applied as a wash or maybe a marker technique, which gives it a lot of warmth, especially when you put it up against the stark black of the line work and the white, or I guess really the off yellow of the paper. It's used to draw your eye exactly where Cooke needs it to be, basically functioning as either highlights, midtones, or shadows at any given time, depending what the situation calls for. All of Cooke's Parker books use this monochrome approach with different colors, and it's something I love and really want to try at some point. It's also a lot harder than it looks, which is also probably why I've chickened out so far. Cooke's line art is incredibly lean. If the liner mark doesn't serve the story, it's not there. Look at this diner shot. The tree is just some splotches of leaves. The diner's reduced to its really just most basic shapes, with the roof being just a jagged squiggle. And the city is just some rough rectangles. But it really feels real, lived in and solid. Nothing is over-rendered for the sake of showing off how well he could draw. It's rendered to get the message across to us and serve as the story, and that's it. An even simpler application of that is this reception room at a doctor's office. There's not much to it at all once you start breaking it down, but it doesn't feel empty. You get enough information about what it is, and then you're moving on. I really like this shot of a workshop as well. There's a ton of info conveyed in just a few lines without really much rendering at all. Clear shapes give enough of a hint at what each object is that our brain just fills in the rest. Just look at those. They're really just so loose. Oh, and speaking of shapes, this is a fairly large cast of characters throughout, both within our group of crooks pulling the heist and the townsfolk they eventually run up against. Cooke uses distinct shapes and silhouettes for each character, so you're never unsure of who you're looking at. Even when characters of similar shapes might be next to each other, each character's attitude and posture keeps them distinct. Just look at all these guys. They absolutely ooze personality, and at a glance you know kind of what they're all about. I really love this little sequence. Exactly enough rendering to tell us what's going on without getting bogged down in unnecessary details. Look at that truck in panel 3. It's mostly just some really simple boxes with a couple circles and lines making it up. And then when you get inside the cab in the bottom tier, you don't really see that much either, but you know exactly what you're looking at. Plus body language, shapes, and silhouettes of each character, it all reads crystal clear. Something that stylized technique is really good for is allowing for some more fanciful designy stuff too. Check out this little sequence here. With this little fantasy sequence the character is envisioning, you don't balk at all with the integration of the musical notes kind of moving through the characters and their positions. It all just fits together smoothly. And look at the dancers in the second panel. Cooke's essentially creating a depth of field effect without actually needing to blur or obscure anything by just simplifying the characters to their basic component shapes. Something I think gets lost a lot of the time is the need or the lack of need for backgrounds. We get an establishing shot here to set up the room and everyone's position they're in. From that point on, though, we're more concerned with the acting, so Cooke drops the backgrounds out to make sure the acting remains as clear as possible. On the following pages, if Cooke were to add backgrounds, you'd end up with a much busier panel setup, mudding the storytelling, making it harder to establish what the focus of each is. This panel is really neat with the negative space of the foreground figure also functioning as a word balloon. Look at how the hand is rendered to both not get lost in the silhouette, but also bridge us between the main action and that abstracted silhouette. Otherwise, we might kind of get lost in what's the blob of the negative space and what's the figures and all that fun stuff. These two pages of the crooks casing the town are great too. A bunch of different locations might be tempting to just render the snot out of, but Cooke keeps it exactly simple enough that we get the point. That industrial shot in panel 2 is so simple, and so is the garage in panel 4. It's just a single wall, a hint of a car, and some really abstract tools, but that reads exactly as a garage. On the next page, I love the use of black to just draw your eye through everything, and how the narration is integrated directly into the panels without the need for traditional text boxes. That direct integration of the narration into the art is something he does throughout too. Placing the narration in a traditional box would make it feel a bit dissociated from the story. But thanks to the stylization, Cooke can make sure there's room for the text to become a direct part of the story, making it feel extremely natural to be there, and that it's part of the art and not just an overt design element we need to make sure we can read the text. Now, as beautiful as the art is, the story is also fantastic, and I do highly recommend it. I come back to this series pretty regularly for rereads. Single print editions and a couple prestige collected editions are available, and you can also purchase these all digitally from Amazon. I've included links in the description for anyone who wants to check them out. Now, unfortunately, Cooke passed away in 2016, so the 4 Parker adaptations we have are all we were blessed to receive, but what a blessing. These things are amazing. And this was by no means his only comic work either. He left an amazing legacy of work behind that I'll definitely bring up in future episodes. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this book, and I'll see you next time.